A lot of people as a leader think, you put ego and pride first and you got to have the best ideas and you got to get the best stuff out there, but you're going to fail. Why not let other people on the team contribute and they might succeed or they might fail?
People don't buy a product, they buy you. They see how you operate. They want to attach themselves to those values more, and it actually makes them feel good. If you're looking to grow in your personal life and dominate in business so you can finally realize the life you've been working for, then you'll love today's guest. Jim Sabellico is an expert in growing businesses online. And considering he started his first business when he was 8 years old, it's fair to say he's had some practice. But he's also hit some rocky patches on his journey, leading him to change how he approaches his life and business. So if you're someone who struggles with work-life balance, his words are going to hit you like half a cake. Yes, I said half a cake. Stick around to know where the other half of the cake went. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. I appreciate that intro. I'm honored to be here with you guys. I'm looking forward to our chat today.
Awesome. Us as well. And we're going to dive right in because whenever anybody mentions that they started working at the ripe old age of 8, I'm intrigued. I admit my 8-year-old entrepreneur aspirations, I did have some of those, but I don't know that I'd call them a grand success. But it sounds like you parlayed that into a lot of success as the founder of J. Lewis Technologies, which is a digital marketing agency. I'd love to just hear a little bit more about your journey.
Sure. I would be happy to. So, you got that right. At the age of 8, I started my first business, which is actually this hat right over my head here, Jim Co. We still joke about it sometimes in the family, but what really wound up happening was during the summer months, my father would be at work, my mother would be at work, my brother and sister were older than I, so I was home by myself for a large period of time, and didn't like to just sit around. I wanted to do something productive, so I decided to get the lawnmower out of the yard, and I would walk around the neighborhood cutting grass. I would 6 or 8 houses in the area, and when you're making a couple $100 a week as an 8-year-old kid with no realistic expenses, you're on top of the world. You can do whatever you want. And that gave me a very early, twisted version of what success was. And I got a good taste for financial freedom and the ability to buy whatever you want, whenever you wanted it as a kid, which led me into a lot of other very interesting ventures over the years, some of which were I used to walk people back to my house on lunch break at school to install wallpapers on their Nextel phones when those first came out. No one else could figure it out, and I had this cable that I got from some website in China that I could install a wallpaper and you couldn't, so I'd charge you $20 and I'll upload a picture to your phone. And you name it, I've been involved in a lot of very interesting, I guess what they'd be called side hustles at this point. But it's been a long journey.
You're an 8-year-old baller, basically.
Yes.
When you were approaching it that way, and you think about acting, because it obviously sounded like a natural kind of drive and just something you ended up doing. I mean, I guess how you filled your time. I'm curious, was it free with how much you wanted to watch TV or other things around the house, or were you didn't have a whole lot of time to do that, so you're I got to find something to do with my time?
I would say probably most of it came from my parents, more specifically my father, in the fact that his work ethic and what I saw as an example of how he worked was before I woke up till after I went to bed, almost every day. He was working in a city, which at that point where we lived was 45-minute commute. So before I woke up for school, or in summer or whatever, he'd be gone. And then he'd come home at 8 o'clock at night. So my example that I saw of what you do is you just wake up and you work, you do something productive. So for me, it wasn't should I sit around and play video games or should I go out and do something? It was just, that was normal. So that's what I did.
Dang. See, I see that, and I'm looking at it with my kids right now. I'm like, why aren't they seeing me do? No, we're trying to instill a similar sort of work ethic, but it's always interesting thing, and especially for you and your kids. Have you seen them take on a similar sort of approach, or is it varied based on your child?
It's different, and I think we'll get into that a little bit more later because that wasn't necessarily the best lesson I've ever learned. Should we dive into that now, or you want to?
You know what? Let's dive into it now. Why not? Yeah.
All right.
We'll take the journey.
Jump right in. So here's what wound up happening. Let's continue the story of me working throughout the years.
Yeah.
I got that early definition of success, and I was like, all right, cool. I know I'm supposed to like wake up, go out, be productive, and then, go win the bread, come back home and provide.
Yeah.
So what wound up happening was, fast forward a few years, after I got married, I found out we were pregnant with the first kid, Joseph. And I'll never forget, my wife worked up until like a couple days before she gave birth. The last day she worked at a job, because being a mom is a job. So, the traditional work.
Yeah.
Let's enter that caveat here.
Yeah.
She came home carrying a tote bag in each hand and said, I don't care if I have to eat peanut butter and jelly the rest of my life. I don't want to have to do this anymore. So to me, being a man, I was like, all right, let me provide for my wife. Let me provide for my family. I'll go out and I'll work harder. So I leaned into work, and I leaned into, all right, if I don't necessarily know how to provide for a baby, that was never my skill set. I grew up knowing how to go make money, go market things. I didn't know how to care for a kid. Like, give me an older kid that I can talk to and we can work some things out, fine. But as a baby, like, the baby's crying, I can't, I physically don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So staring at being a father for the first time, I wanted to provide for my wife. I wanted to provide for our family. And I leaned back on that definition of, you get up in the morning, you wake up before everyone else, you go to work, you provide financially for your family, and you come back home, make sure that they have a roof over their heads. So that's what I did. For 6 straight years, I basically left my wife to be a single mother, and not in a malicious way. I wasn't out drinking, gambling, chasing women around, but I said, hey, let me lean into work. And I thought at the time, with my kids being so young, they're not going to remember daddy wasn't home all the time. I was working like a madman. Let me go out and do this now so that way I can spend time with them later. So that's what I did. I used to get up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I would actually go on Instagram and post a video of me driving to work with the highways clear to show how hard I was hustling, grinding harder than everybody else, and come home at 8, 9 o'clock at night, because that was the example that I had. And I said I did it for 6 straight years because the night of my son's birthday, October 29th, 2019, he was 6. I come home 8:45 at night, and it's my son's 6th birthday. They're kind of excited because it's his birthday, but kind of tired because it's late. And I was like, all right, let's sing happy birthday. So my wife pulls out the birthday cake, and half of it is already missing. And my heart sunk in that moment. I felt disrespected. I'm like, how dare, and I didn't say this out loud, but how dare you? I'm out providing for the family and you guys don't even wait for me to sing happy birthday. It's that's the instant reaction, right? I'm sacrificing all this to provide for the family, and I missed it. Really, realistically, I was just pissed at myself. If you ask me what I was doing up until 8:45 at night that was so important, I couldn't even wager a guess at this point. Clearly on that day, I thought it was more important than being there to sing happy birthday to my kid. I'll never get the opportunity to sing happy birthday again on his 6th birthday, right? And I understand, Lord willing, he'll have more birthdays and I'll get the chance again, but I don't know if I'm going to have that chance, right? Tomorrow's not promised. And the older I get, the more lessons I learn, the more I realize every day, every opportunity that we have to live and provide for other people and to serve and to just be here in the moment is an opportunity that we shouldn't waste. And that for me was my no half cake moment. When I took that picture, it's a picture that lives on the wallpaper of my phone that I stare at multiple times a day, is my kids singing happy birthday over half a birthday cake. I'll never forget it. And there's plenty of times now where it's hey, you need to be in 6 places at once. You need to be at the dance recital. You need to be at the lacrosse game. You need to be dad hanging out in the backyard having a catch. But you also have responsibilities for your business, for your house, for yourself. So I struggle sometimes with, how do you be in multiple places at once? How do you not have another half cake moment? Because there's plenty of times when the kids come up to you and say, hey, Dad, can you play with me? And you're sitting there, you're in the zone, and you're like, all right, I know I have this deadline. this person's emailing me, I have this call coming up, but you have your kid there saying, hey, daddy, can you play with me? And man, how many times is that kid going to ask you that? Only so many. Right? There's a stat, and I could find the reference for it. But on average, you get 19 years alone with your kids. First 18 as they're like in the house going to school. And then over the course of the rest of their lives, and this is again on average, they spend 365 single days with you. Right? So the first 1 through 18, you got them all to yourself. 19 through 70 amounts to 365 days worth. Like, consider that when you consider where you're spending your time and what's really important.
Yeah.
So I know that was kind of a long answer to the question, but
I love
it. It was. I got goosebumps listening to it. I relate so much to that because my son is now 5, and one of the things that I told myself before he was born was, I'm not gonna miss big moments with him. Both Michael and I are big readers. And all I can think of is every time I read a biography or any type of book by a really ultra successful person, they talk about their journey. And then at the very end, they sprinkle in, oh, but I really regret not spending more time with my family and kids. So I was like, okay, I get the first 12 chapters, but why would I ignore the last chapter? And to me, that really stuck. So when my wife got pregnant, I was very clear with myself, I am not going to miss their childhood. And I've been very deliberate at that. I say no to things just to make sure I don't experience half cake.
It's hard though. I think it's something that, depending on where people are or the period of their life, and in some cases, the types of jobs that they have. Because, you know, when I do hear these stories out there about, the single parent who's working 2 to 3 jobs trying to, make ends meet. And, when I read those, sometimes I think, okay, but there is an alternative. Just they don't understand, or they're not seeing that alternative. Maybe it's because they're not, they haven't told themselves, they haven't had their half cake moment. They haven't, determined what it is that is going to send them down the pathway to find some other way. But those, even for myself right now, as I pivot more to my entrepreneurial side of things. And actually, funny enough, a lot of that is because I want to show my kids a little bit more of that side of that lifestyle, but I'm trying to do it within balance where it doesn't mean that it takes everything away. We also operate a short-term rental, and I got to tell you, because that's a hospitality business, whenever something pops up there, I can't tell you how many times my kids are like, Dad, I'm like, hold on 1 second. We're playing, ball or something like that. And I'm just like, 1 second, because I got to handle those sort of things. And some of those will pop up, and I try to find a balance at times between, okay, there's going to be these things in life. What also matters is how frequently they occur, or how much you try to make sure you're still making quality time of the moments. And again, not missing, I think, some of those critical things. But it's difficult. So I'm curious to learn a little bit more of how you balance it. But maybe before we do that, we'll jump back a little bit to understand actually some of your journey. This is like a Quentin Tarantino movie as we jump around to, the different sides. But because I think it'll be helpful to be able to understand like what you ended up building, because you still have your hands in a variety of things, but you had your hands, it sounds like, over time, and even more. So could you share that so that our audience can understand also a little bit more of the type of transitions you had to make and how you've done it?
Sure. So over the years, I've been involved in car stereo and alarm business, bakery, restaurant, dog toys, some different software suites, freelance marketplace, baseball memorabilia. There's been a tremendous number of different businesses and ventures that I've been a part of over the years.
It might have been easier if I just said, tell us what you weren't involved with. Yeah, no, a lot. Have you always been entrepreneurial, or have you ever had like a typical 9 to 5?
I've had a typical 9 to 5 at various stages through that. Not because I lost the entrepreneurial spirit, but because there was benefits to it at the time.
Yeah.
It was like a local government job where I could pick up to get pension and benefits, but also enough free time to still do the entrepreneurial hustle on the side.
Strategic 9 to 5. I like it.
Yes.
Awesome. So then with those and some of the businesses, I know I jumped in and interrupted you a little bit there. So how did you get to where you are today with your, and you still have a few different companies today. Is that correct? Or would you share a little bit about those?
Sure. So the main one is, as you mentioned before, J. Lewis Technology, which, depending upon when this is released or not, may still be called that. But we're undergoing a bit of a rebrand currently.
But not revealed yet.
That's
public.
No, not to the public, but I might sneak it in there a little bit later. You'll see. But that's
Jim. It's Jimco. It's Jimco, isn't it?
I've considered it. So that's sort of the umbrella that really serves all the rest. That has been the customer service team, the marketing team, the web development, the social media. That was a business that I started originally out of a need to serve other people and help other people. My very first customer actually was someone that we were getting paleo recipes from, who I noticed that their website was a little lackluster compared to their content. I said, hey, I know that this could be better. Do you mind if I'll do it for free, but I just want you to have a better website. So that was the very first customer I ever had. Didn't charge them a dime. Did it just because they deserved it. And she wound up referring me to literally everyone since. It's been steady word of mouth over the past 11 years for that business. It all relates back to just doing the right thing first, not chasing profit, but chasing purpose. So that's been kind of the central undertone of everything. And that business, J. Lewis, has been like the launching pad for other ventures. They all kind of use the same central team, if you will.
You said something really cool, not chase profit, but chase purpose. What would you say instilled that mindset in you?
I'll give credit to my mother for this one. She has a very servant's heart, and always looking to make sure that people were provided for, and not thinking about how will this benefit me, but how can I provide for this other person? And I've seen her do that consistently through her entire life. And, you want to talk about things you pick up from your parents. I give credit to my father for his work ethic, tirelessly willing to just go out and just get it done. My mother for being able to just give consistently, even when, you don't know how much more you can give, you continue to give. And that's been something that I wanted to pour into this business, because to me, a lot of people look at business as transactions. I think business is way different than what people think it is. It's more an exchange of value. And I have something that's of value to you. You have something that's of value to me. How can we serve each other? And traditionally people look at how can I go get more customers? I tend to look at it as how can I serve more people? And I think when you put the service first, everything else kind of flows. The money will flow. The people will come because you're giving out something of value. You're giving out care and effort, and people will want that. They appreciate that. And I think now more than ever, as people start to look into like, how can I use AI bots to try and scale how much I serve people? You can't replace care. It's not physically possible. So
yeah,
I'm doubling down on that.
That's awesome. I really like that. And I think I love what you said about just person just deserved it. And it's this, maybe I shouldn't call it a struggle, because as you said, it's actually, it's a great attribute, to have, or quality to have. But for me, at times, like I was joking yesterday with Art, and I'm like, well, I signed up for like 3 pro bono things, today, because I was helping some people who I knew could use help with this, because I could see them going down this wrong pathway, and they're not at a place right now where they, could pay for it. And it's just like, well, but I don't want to see them suffer. So it just feels like the thing to do. But it's that trade-off at times, at least for me, as I'm trying to now reestablish this, where I'm like, dang it, soon, I have to start making sure I, charge for some of the services. But I think what you said there, it's like, well, eventually those things follow if you're leading with that, purpose of why you're doing things, and people see that, because ultimately people don't buy a product, they buy you. So, over time, as they see that and they see how you operate, they want to attach themselves to those values more, and it actually makes them feel good buying and supporting you. So that's incredible. Yeah. So then,
thank you.
I'm curious now though, if because you have, it sounds like through these different businesses, if and this will have a follow-up, trust me, even though sometimes when people ask the questions, how big is your team? It sounds like we judge, our success on team. And I know it's not that, but I'm curious, how large of a team you do currently lead across these businesses.
Across all of them combined is about 70 people.
And I anticipated it was going to be a larger number like that, which then brings me to my next question and takes us back to work-life balance. Because when you have teams of that size, like I manage teams of that size, and it's, I don't want to call it a challenge because it's also, a gift. If you've got the right team members, you built the team this way, you have a culture the way it is. But at the same time, you want to be there for them. And while I know some companies don't like to use the term family for them, they use team instead for it. However you want to look at it, it's still a group of people that I anticipate you operate this way. And it's definitely how I look at it, is with the servant mentality of you want to do right by them. You want to help them. You want to see them be successful. They are part of, whether you call it a family or a team, your organizations. But that now means that between that and between your family, you've got, more people that are in some ways under your care. And I'm just curious how you find the right balance for that, if that's a fair assessment.
It is. So I want to answer that question, but I want to take one side note first, because I want to offer a suggestion for you or for anyone who uses the term balance. And I want to suggest to replace it with harmony.
I like
Again,
integration.
I don't know.
Harmony is good too. I'm with you though. Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of people talk about work-life balance, but to me, balance is always, it's a juggling act when you're taking one thing away from somewhere else to put it somewhere where it's needed. And life is not going to be stable enough where you can really balance things, because you don't want to be taking away from your family to put into work. You want to be able to lift them all at the same time. So for me, the same way that I've been able to work on harmony instead of balance is find ways for everyone to win. Whether that's, hey, I have to go on a business trip, let's add an extra day and turn it into a family vacation. Let's get the kids involved in the business. My daughter has been instrumental, she's 6, in the puppy toy business, because she helps me pack the boxes, she helps me take pictures, she helps me do other stuff to the best that she can. It helps me have time with her, it helps give her a core memory. But what I want to relate this back to is I'm not leading a team of 70 people. Okay, I am standing up first and saying, hey, these are the core values that I have. I want to know your core values. If we're aligned, we're going in the same direction. So these 70 people, or however many people are on your team, it could be the same in your family, it could be the same in your business, doesn't really matter. If everyone has similar core values and you're all going to the same place, you build up a group of people who are so strong and so authentic in that conviction that you don't have one leader and then 69 followers. You've got 70 leaders. Okay, so you walk into that business, they're all going to hold each other accountable. They're all going to hold each other to that standard, because that they know that they're able to be that. And the hardest part there is really getting people to see and believe that for themselves. Because a lot of people hold this self-limiting belief that they're just an employee, or they're just a busboy, or they're just this. Like, every person is so integral to the total success, but you need to spend a lot of time up front to really work with people and help unlock that. And I think that sort of helped me transition into what I'm really spending a lot of my own time doing now, is helping people deal with the personal side of business. For me, I believe that strong people build strong businesses. And I think we look at it a little bit backwards. We look at, hey, how can I grow the business to be X, right? I want to add a chatbot. I want to add this because I want to build a bigger business. We don't address the people in it first. So to me, I spent a lot of time helping with self-confidence, identity, authenticity, like helping people live their best life. Those people are going to build the business for you. That's easy after that.
Amazing. I think there's a lot of people who are going to listen to this and be like, is he hiring? Because what you just said is what so many people want, and but so few people actually find it, I feel like, or at least,
It's what I say, true leadership.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
my definition of true leadership. Because when leadership doesn't involve thinking about the person at an individual level, then you're just managing projects. It's no longer leadership. At least that's how I always looked at it.
I agree.
And I think with what you said on the harmony, I'm completely with you. It's hard sometimes with the balance conversation, because to me, balance is you're in a constant state of friction because you're never going to find perfect balance, but you're trying it. That feels like that kind of standard term that so many people use out there, that it's sometimes the easy entry into it. But yeah, harmony, integration is something I'll talk about at times because it just acknowledges that there's still going to be, especially when you're entrepreneur, executive, other things, there's this balance that starts to happen where you can't just leave it at work completely when you come home, because sometimes just some of these things, the nature of them are there. When I managed a global team, it turns out that I'd have to jump on later on, in the evening. I try to keep dinner sacred, but it just turns out that to talk to my team who's in India or in Asia, it just was something you had to do. So it's how you integrate, how you harmonize these things are so important. How do you actually, curious, didn't prepare you at all for this one, here, but when you are onboarding team members and you're looking at it in values and fits like that, because obviously, as you said, the key is you find, hire people that are going to be a good fit for that culture. And granted, there may be some coaching and guidance that you're going to continue to still give them anyways, and especially sometimes to undo their, I joke and call it their programming from their previous, places where somebody told them it wasn't okay to speak up, or where somebody told them, that whatever they said was dumb, and therefore they stop speaking up as much. So it's like I think sometimes helping them out of that own thing. But how do you hire and find people that are fit to your culture? Is there a specific way you approach that?
So the saying goes, hire character, train skill. And in a lot of cases, it's especially when you're first getting started, it's really like pushing a snowball. It takes a lot of effort for each one individually as you first get started. But as you kind of get a little bit further into it, the rest of the team, and whichever business it is, kind of helps identify, that person's a fit, no, they're not a fit, or even helps hold them accountable. I would think the biggest tactical strategy I can give someone is ignore the resume. I could put whatever I want on a resume, and that's going to look good or read a certain way, right?
AI is writing it these days for everybody anyway.
Fair, yes. Skip like the standard questions about, where do you picture yourself in 5 years, blah, 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 like the standard interview questions, forget it. And speak to them as a human, find out what their core values are, talk to them about like, hey, where do you go for vacation? What do you do for fun? What are your hobbies? Like, talk to them about their life and start understanding how to pick up on who they are as a person. Because what's going to come down to it is in any business that you have, when they get into a situation where they're really under some amount of pressure, they're going to default back to those standards. So if their standards are, I value my family, I value my reputation, I value respect, they're going to fall back to those. So that, look, when push comes to shove, maybe they don't have the skill, but they're not going to let it fail because they value that. So they're going to be like, hey, other person on the team, I'm in this situation, can you help me? You'll pick that up just from having a regular conversation with people, but it takes a lot of effort to really kind of fine-tune your skills to really understand the empathetic part of people.
Do you find that you hire more people through referrals from the existing team, or do you find you actually do go out and seek applications directly?
It's a bit of a mix, especially like in the restaurant business. That's a lot of looking for people more so than referrals.
That's a good point. In fact, I can't remember. Did we mention the restaurant one yet in this conversation? Because that's another one of your
Yeah. We did briefly.
I want to hear about the sushi restaurant.
Sushi restaurant's more fun to be at than to talk about. But it's each one is a little bit different as far as like where you're going to go find people.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But in a lot of cases, it really comes down to just trying to get past what they give on the surface level, because so many people have been trained to put their best foot forward and give you the resume and pretend to be what you think that they want them to be.
Yeah, I know. It's almost like you want to take that group of individuals and be like, you've all been called in here today because we're going to actually just have you write down on a piece of paper your real skills, just because we want to know you. And then from there, we'll move forward. And if somebody can't do that, you're like, okay, you're actually, I would say you're out, except I win it. I'd probably want to get to the bottom of, okay, how come you can't do this? What's happened? How can we get around that? No, and I was just curious on that because it's, it seems like you built an organization where, and I could get the difference in the restaurant. I mean, it's a really good point, but I could see how you built a business that I would assume people tell their friends about and things like that, or they like to get their friends in there because it sounds like you really respect the team, which is so important. You said something else too that I was glad to hear you say, even though I joke sometimes that parenting is just a big experiment. We all hope we do well with it later on in life when we realize, oh, it was that small thing that we thought was good, that there's a yin and the yang to it. But with involving your kids and with your daughter in the business related to, is it dog toys? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so part of me hopes more, to be able to do, like right now, even as we, with this podcast, recently my son, who's 11-year-old, is helping on some of the thumbnails as Arden and I try to, rework and figure out what those look like. And I love being able to work with him and do those things. And when he's like, Dad, I want to come and, work with you today. And who knows what happens when, they do hit the age of being adult. They could still be like, great, I'm still going off. I want to do this thing. But I will admit, I hold on to hope that, I build that relationship with my kids so that when they are adults, that, the stat you said earlier, which, it's the reality, but I hope there's ways I could find to still kind of work with my kids in business in some form of another, because that becomes, and not just business, but that becomes a way as adults when that's where they get sucked into, to be able to still engage. So that's my hope and dream, even if, sometimes that can go south for folks, but I think hopefully with the right values, right family, we could figure out a way to do that. Is that your longer term, like, hope, or are you open to whatever it is?
I think for me, it's really about trying to set the expectation that it's going to ebb and flow and it's going to fail a lot. As you were saying that, two things really came to mind. One was I want my kids to learn early and often that failure is a good thing, not a bad thing, right? And in any business you go into, you're going to have ideas for what you want to do, and inevitably some of them will suck and some of them will fail.
Yeah.
So if you can encourage other people on your team to also share their ideas, because look, let's be honest, a lot of people as a leader think, you put ego and pride first, and you got to have the best ideas and you got to get the best stuff out there, but you're going to fail. So why not let other people on the team contribute, and they might succeed or they might fail. Like, it doesn't have to be this iron fist thing. And that, again, that's in business and in family. It should be, hey, you're all on the same level. Okay. At the end of the day, yes, there has to be one leader who calls the shots, right? There has to be one person who holds total control, because there needs to be a guiding force moving forward. But there should be mutual respect among where you're going. And that goes into the business, it goes into the family. I don't look at it as I'm dad and you have to do this because I said so. Like, you're allowed to push back. If you have a reason for why you want to do X, Y, and Z, tell me. At the end of the day, sure, sometimes I'm going to have to lay the law down, but like, there needs to be a balance. There needs to be mutual respect. And just because you're younger than me doesn't mean you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, this is the first time I've ever parented a kid this age. Okay. It's going to be the same thing tomorrow and the next day after that. It's going to be the first time I've ever done it. So it doesn't mean I have to be right. And I think there comes where you have to put down the pride, put down the ego, and be willing to be wrong, right? Or not get credit for having the answers.
Right.
So I think that's really what it comes down to is passing more credit than blame.
Yeah, I love that. It's so important. I try to teach my kids the idea that sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, but the loss doesn't have to be there if you're taking the learning from it, and that goes back to the failure side of it. I will say, when my kids do come back with something and they have like a better idea or figure something out, and my oldest especially at times does something like that, where I'm like, no, I tried that, and he goes and he does it. I'm like, dang. But I love when that happens, because I'm like, it's such a great thing when, and that is being open to the idea that it doesn't matter age, it doesn't matter where they're at. It's like anybody could have a better approaches, suggestions, or whatever it is to it. And that I struggle with when I see parents who are like that, are just like, I hate it when somebody says, because I said so, because I personally like to have that conversation to make sure I can explain to my kids what it is. Now, at the same time, back to what you said, and I think there's some companies who are better at practicing. Amazon, who tries this, I think they were doing it a bit at Netflix too, but the disagree and commit. Sometimes somebody is just the decision maker and they do get to make a decision around there, and that's also acceptable. But I love what you said. I think with kids, it is so important that you foster basically that mentality, so that when they then enter the workforce or whatever their future career. Anyone's workforce could be, used different ways, but it's so important because school teaches you instead to always raise your hands, get A's, there's this thing around it. And it's like, that's sometimes, I don't want to say damaging, but it does train you a specific way. And it's often not to be the creative problem solver leader, mentality.
Yeah, I agree. And, I had this conversation with my sister the other day, actually. I think the example is, hey, your kid is struggling in math, but exceptional at tennis. Do you hire them a tennis coach or a math tutor? Like, I think, there comes a time when we have to realize not everyone's going to fit the mold of the perfect student, and not everyone's going to fit the mold of what you imagine them to be.
Yep.
Doesn't mean you have to give up on your standards, right? You should still be able to hold your own, and should still have a high standard of achievement. You want to do good in math, fine. But if you're gifted with a certain thing, lean into that, and you need to be supported. And I think that's another thing that I will see in bosses, leaders, parents. We'll lump them into one and the same. The expectation that someone's going to do a certain thing, but meanwhile, their gift might be somewhere else. So if you can help them identify that and really pour into them and their gift and really help them elevate that up, that serves everybody. It serves them. It serves you, right? Everyone benefits from them being in that gift.
It's so important because so many people struggle to sometimes pursue and follow those. And especially because I think, again, taking it back to the school side of it, oftentimes people decide what they want to do because this is what so-and-so's doing, or this is what they've been told their whole life. And that's where people often follow these certain types of degrees, or sometimes they just rebel and they're like, I'm going to get my degree in, this here because why not? But again, to me, it's if they can be pursuing more of that thing that they just naturally good at and they really enjoy, I think that's really important. And I think in the leaders who are good at finding that, it's actually the jackpot, because assuming you have those gaps and things to fill within an organization, because oftentimes people might be hired into one role and it turns out actually their skills aren't the greatest fit for it because they may not have, some of what you just described about this natural sort of, I want to be careful, natural too, because I think people can build some of these things, but this draw to it and this want to be their best at that specific thing. And those are the people I like to unleash on those type of problems.
This conversation reminds me of that quote. It says something like, everyone's a genius, but if you judge a fish by how well it climbs a tree, then they're going to think they're stupid their whole life. That quote always keeps coming back to me. Book conversation, and I think it's such a good one. And it points out that if someone has a gift, definitely lean into it. And the other thing that it reminds me of is, I think it's Tony Robbins, and Michael, you correct me if I'm wrong. He says something along the lines of, focus on your majors, not your minors.
Yeah.
He says something along those lines, which is about basically the same concept.
Jim, I'm curious too, though. Like, again, Art and I, we consider ourselves still students to a lot of things in practicing a lot of what it sounds like you preach, for lack of a better way, put it, or how you live. And I'm just curious, what has been your influence that has brought you to this place? I know you had obviously your half cakes, a moment, if you will, and that stuck with you. But there's a lot of other things that you seem to strive to live by. Was that really just around the things you picked up from the parents, or are you an avid reader, or are there some other things that you've done along the way to adopt those, I call them, qualities?
Sure. So there's two things I could point to immediately. One of them would be 2008. I got into a really bad car accident. I was, just to paint the picture real quick, I was in what they call the suicide lane, which is where you can either turn left or turn right, depending on which way you're coming from.
Yeah.
Waiting for opposing traffic to clear. It was about 11 o'clock at night, rainy Friday night. I'm waiting for opposing traffic to clear. I was going to get coffee. And kid, 16 years old, had his license for about a week, wasn't paying attention. He was driving 60 miles an hour in that lane. So I'm sitting still, waiting to turn. He nails me from behind, 60 miles an hour. I spin through oncoming traffic.
Wow.
Now, I don't remember a lot of this because I blacked out at that point, but there was a guy standing there on the sidewalk who said, I don't know how you survived. That was a miracle. Now, if there was a way for me to have driven through that traffic on my own, I would have done it.
Yeah.
there were cars coming steady fast and I did not get hit. So to me, it gave me two things to realize. One is life is really fragile and can be over at any minute. Like, it doesn't have to be, you don't wake up in the morning, it doesn't have to be this, whatever. It could be over like that, right? I might not see tomorrow.
Right.
So understanding that life is fragile gave me a real reason to appreciate and live today and this minute right now with everything I got, because I might not get a second chance at it. Number two is it made me realize that there's a reason why I'm here and my purpose has not been fulfilled yet. So I don't know everyone's position on faith, how much people want to get into it, but the God of your understanding.
Yeah.
To me, I realized in that moment that there's a reason why I'm here and I haven't figured it out yet. So if I did, right, job's done, I'm out. But I realized in that moment, like, I've got something else to give and I'm now in continuous pursuit of what that is. So part two of that is getting yourself around enough people who can elevate you and lift you up and hold you to a higher standard. This, for me, getting around a bunch of people, I'll give credit to my friends Steve, Al, Chris. Those have been pillars in my life over the past 4 years specifically, who really hold you to a higher standard and lift you up. And I think a lot of us wind up staying in the same circle of friends that we grew up in, or people who are just geographically close to us.
Right.
And you find yourself limited by that a lot. So getting around people who speak life into you and who hold you accountable and will keep elevating you further up has been a tremendous blessing.
And with that, how important do you feel like having that future vision for yourself, or at least who you want to be personally?
I don't know, because I don't know who I want to be. I want to be me, and I don't necessarily know what that looks like yet.
But it sounds like you've known the type of person you don't want to be, which is then, like, I'm trying to think about what points you to the right people that you want to surround yourself with, whether that is, and I guess sometimes the future vision could be the, not the anti-vision, but trying to look at how to guide towards, like, when you made that decision. I think a lot of people struggle to make that decision because they're comfortable in where they're at on a daily basis. It's easier. These are the group. These are the people. So sometimes they don't acknowledge or know, and maybe it doesn't matter if they're happy. There's this really weird balance. But yeah, so I was just kind of curious because you hit those moments that helped you get there. There's some people I think that often face these moments where they know they're not where they want to be, but they don't acknowledge actually how important the people that they hang around with are. So that's where I guess I'm just kind of curious on how, when individuals have this sort of thing that they think that they want to get to, but how do they actually make this transition from the today to that tomorrow?
I would say a core component of that is self-confidence, identity, and authenticity. If you can really know who you are and not be afraid to be that right now, that's a tremendous start. Part two of that would be a willingness to put down your ego and your pride and recognize that you don't have all the answers, and there's a lot of people out there who are way smarter than you at specific things, right? Each one has a gift. And then to honor those people and find people who are better than you at things and surround yourself with them. Like, just having a constant pursuit of improvement. I think that's what it comes down to, is that you're always looking to improve. That you're never just okay with where I'm at, right? To quote Kobe, job's not done, right? We know that there's more work to do. So just finding people who are better than you at a thing and soaking up whatever knowledge you can, right? Knowing that you can always improve, and finding people who have those gifts and things that you want to, level up on yourself.
Speaking of that, I'm curious for you, as you have looked at your life, and you have looked at how you can better balance this stuff. Like, are there some key things that come to mind that you suggest for people to, they may have not had their own, I'll call it emotional or core memory moment with the no have cakes themselves. So sadly, sometimes people read these stories, they hear them, they're like, oh man, it sticks with them, but then they might fall back into their other thing. So I'm curious, granted, no, you're not going to solve the having that own moment themselves. Best you could do is share your story and hope that inspires. But what are some of the tactics you've taken for some of those folks out there who might at least be able to be like, okay, that's great, I hear this, but I wish there was a few tactical things I could actually try to do to find more of that harmony in my life. Do you have any recommendations around that?
So if you want a really tactical answer to that question, something that anyone could do tomorrow or today,
Yeah.
is try and get 50 no's in a row. So that to me would be one of the biggest things that I could ever ask anyone to do, would be to try and get people to say no to you 50 times in a row. And I will almost guarantee you will never hit it.
Interesting.
So just go out and ask for stuff. Ask for a discount on your meal. Ask for whatever it is. Just go out and try and get 50 no's in a row. And it's going to do two things. One is it's going to realize you're going to get more yeses than you realize. Two, you're going to stop being so afraid of rejection. And I think for a lot of people, if you can stop being afraid of judgment and what other people think of you and just be willing to be judged, like people are going to judge you regardless. It doesn't matter how good a thing you're doing, you're going to get judged. Right? I've gotten judged and criticized for a lot of things. I've gotten a lot of opinions for things I've done. But at a certain point, when you build up enough self-confidence and authenticity in who you are and you live your own true identity, who cares? My opinion of myself is awesome. I love who I am. I love the life I wake up to every day. Doesn't mean tomorrow won't be better, but it also means that if someone else criticizes that, I'm okay with it because I love it, right? So I think for people to be okay with rejection, be okay with criticism, would be step number one. And then number two would be surrounding yourself with people who are going to hold you accountable and lift you up higher, right? Seeking those people out. And I'll be the first one to volunteer. If you cannot find those people, find me. I'm literally the only Jim Sabellico on earth. Go find me on Instagram or Facebook. I'll be that person for you. Okay, and I might not be able to hang out with you every day, but like, go subscribe to my newsletter. I'll email you a couple times a week. We'll talk. Okay, I will be there for you as much as humanly possible. People deserve to realize how capable they are. And I think for a lot of people, we get stuck in this mask where we have to put on a mask every day, where we have to like give this version of ourselves to go out and get more likes and comments and just get this validation from the outside world. And if we can unlock that part, just be who we are, right? And realize that maybe the 10 people around you don't love you for that. They don't celebrate you for that.
Yeah.
Go find 10 more people, right? Your options are either to change who you are or change your environment. And too often we change who we are to fit the environment that we're in, rather than realizing like we're worth more. Like stop limiting ourselves to just fit into this little jar that people put us in. Go find new people.
I love that approach of 50 no's. It's such a easy thing to digest and say, oh, that's easy to do, and then go out and do it. I love that.
It's a lot safer than the other thing I heard about where somebody said, just go lay down in a street just to get comfortable being, uncomfortable and having people have to like go around you instead of you having to accommodate everybody else. So yours is much, much better. No, and it is so true. And I admit I struggle with that. And I've gotten better at it, but it's definitely something for me. It's like, we all fear, rejection, failure, anything, but it's like, no, you it's still part of life. And despite me knowing and completely agreeing that failure is a pathway, it's still so hard because, however you want to look at our existing invisible scripts in our head and the things that we have to get over. And a lot of that starts, based on how we're raised and some of the other things we're saying, the education, other things we go through. But I think there's this, call it evolutionary piece. There's just this piece historically as we try to survive as species, and therefore people are like, I'm afraid. And that's just this natural reaction. But I think you could test that and you could push past that by having enough, call it rejection, to realize that, none of those were life-threatening. Like my brain somehow goes to every time and assumes that this next thing is going to be, the death of me. It's generally not. It's super rare. There's an exercise Tim Ferriss talks about called fear setting, where that's where he'll often go through every time there's something. And if he's feeling that way, he makes the, list. It's like, what's the worst thing that can happen in these? What's the likelihood of these things happening? And generally the answer is none of them are probably going to come to be. And even then it's like, if this did happen, then how would I recover? Oh, this way, this way, this way. It's like, okay, great. And through that exercise, he gets to a place where he's like, it's not that bad, brain. Let's, move forward. And it's that sort of dance that you sometimes have to do with fear of rejection or what have you.
Yeah, I strongly agree. I sometimes will say to myself, but will I die?
Right. That's great.
And, it's a similar thing. Like you put yourself in a scenario, will I die? Probably not. Like the odds are not really great of me dying from doing whatever this thing is. So whatever else is underneath that, just going to suck. Like, it all amounts to, if I'm not going to die, it's just going to suck. And if I do die, then I won't have to deal with it anymore. So, I think part of that is also having faith. And I know I touched on this a little bit before, having faith in the bigger picture. So, like, understanding that you're not necessarily going to be in control of what your purpose here on earth is, right? And I know obviously everyone's going to have a different belief on that. But for me, I believe I'm here for a purpose. Again, I'm going to continue to seek that out until I find it. And I know that story, if you will, is already written, right? I may not know it yet, but it's already written. So I'm going to continue to go out and live the best possible version of myself and not necessarily worry about, hey, if I fail at this tomorrow, like what happens if I get on this podcast with you guys and I totally botch it and I screw it up? Maybe it'll be a good thing. Maybe it'll lead me to some other thing, right? But not worrying about, hey, if I show up and do I have to say this? Do I have to say that? No, it gives you permission to just go out there and be yourself and just live because you know that there is a bigger picture, right? I want to explain something to you. This analogy, I hope makes some sense. I was watching the movie Honey, I Shrunk My Kids, right? You remember that movie?
Yeah.
So there comes a point, I'm sitting there on the couch, my wife and 2 kids are watching it. And it's the point where the kids are in the backyard and they're walking through and the scorpion comes out. And my daughter starts getting real upset because she's afraid that the kids are all going to die.
Yeah.
And she comes, we pause the movie because she's getting real upset. And she comes and she sits on my lap. And I explained to her, it's okay. I've already seen the movie. They're going to be fine. And what I'm driving at here is there comes a point in time where all of us are those kids where we're nervous, like, how's it going to work out? And you need that lap to sit on, right? Whether that's a friend, whether that's your faith, whatever it is, who's seen the story and knows how it's going to work out. And you got to find those people in your life who are going to be like, hey, I know right now it's scary. I've been here. Let's walk it out. And I think having those people in your life, again, whether that's faith, whether that's a good friend, whatever that is for you, having those people in your life to support you through those moments, because we're all going to have them. Like, none of us know how this is going to work out. We're all just here to do our best, to give everything we got, just be who we are. But if you could find those people and get them in your life, man, the difference is phenomenal.
I love that. And, it definitely with my kids now, as we go through and at moments, even just you saying that's going to make me more zen when they go through, because I swear we'll watch certain movies and they're like, what's this? What's going to happen? What is it? And it's like, but now it's like, as you say that, it does put it in perspective and tie it back to, for them, for that moment, that is like life for them. And it's what we all go through in life. The lines get blurred when your mind is looking at something and doesn't know right or wrong. And oftentimes with our kids, we're like, remember, it's a movie. And despite saying that at times, it's so easy for us to get it, but it's like life is the same way. It's almost like, remember, this is life. You're going to hit these things, but it's fine. Everything's going to be all right. You're going to move forward. So no, that's fantastic advice. I think we should probably leave it on that note, because that's again, amazing. And I think let people kind of walk away and let that resonate with them, because I know it is for me. But before we do depart, would love to just hear, for those individuals who are thinking, yeah, Jim, I'm reaching out to you. How should people find you?
Jim Sabellico is my name. If you look up on Instagram, Facebook, or jimsabellico.com is where you'll find me. Fairly easy guy to find. But other than that, jlewis.com. Or if by the time this comes out, our new site is up, that will be heartcoregrowth.com. Heartcore Growth. Which is that? Yeah, I love the new brand.
Perfect. Great name. Love it. And, at some point too, we may need to have you back on here to talk even more into the, specifically your business, because I have no doubt that you probably have so many gyms to offer. Wait, that was no pun intended. But so much to offer people within your, there might be some other name hidden in there. I don't know, hidden gyms, but, with just the way you operate, what you've done, and even within your own business, like when I look at it and what you built out and how you help people there, which I know then helps them even more in their life as they all seek their own harmony. Definitely, I think something probably worth a future conversation. But I want to walk away with that comment there, and I'm going to go share it actually with my family and my wife afterwards. Now I think it'll be super helpful. So thank you.
I wrote it down so I don't forget. I'm going to go tell my wife right now too.
Who knew? Who knew Honey, I Shrunk the Kids had that buried deep? But
yeah,
you could take something that exists and you could give it just less, just a meaning that can be attached by someone else, and how incredible that could be for others, though. And if I'm not mistaken, too, I that scene, though, I think that's where did the ant meet its demise there? It might have met its demise.
It did.
Yeah, that was another one. That one stuck with me. I'm like,
Yeah.
how as a kid, yeah. So, awesome, Jim. Well, thank you.
Yeah, no,
My
thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Loved having you, and we would love to have you back at some point in the future, because I think that what you share is so valuable.
Thank you. I appreciate the work you guys do and bring those messages out. It's tremendously important.
Awesome. Thank you. And for everyone watching or listening, don't forget to subscribe and follow, whatever platform you're on, just click that button.